The question in my mind with both Medicare and Social Security is, did we make a commitment to the people who were getting them? Mm-hmm. And are we required to keep that commitment? All right. If that's the case, then we either have to figure out a way to cut other things to pay for them, to convince people that the benefits they're getting are too rich for what we can afford, or to tax more to pay for them. Mm-hmm. But the first question is, how real was this commitment? When Social Security was passed, when somebody retired, I'm about to retire within a year, I mean, I've been counting on Social Security because that's what I was told was always coming. Are you telling me now we can't afford it? We can definitely afford it. The question is, how do we want to pay for it? So yes, spending on entitlements, on mandatory spending is going up. Spending on interest on the debt is going to be going up dramatically as interest rates rise. Or we can't cut that back, but we've already made a commitment to the people that we borrowed the money from, the bondholders, that we're going to pay them back. So what are we going to do here? You know, Donald Trump said, I'm going to negotiate for 90 cents on the dollar or something like that. That's not going to happen. But
why not? Why is that?
Because, well, first of all, no, it would be one thing if the government didn't have to keep borrowing. But but because we're running a deficit, right. The government would have to go back into the bond market the next day after we just gave everything.
Happy about what just happened.
Not just not happy, they demand a risk premium for not getting their money back. Now remember, the United States is one of the few countries in its history that's never missed a payment on its debt. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons that the Treasury borrows at such low amounts. So if we're going to change that, mm-hmm. then we better be prepared for much higher interest rates and much higher interest payments. Remember, 55% of the U.S. debt rolls over at least once every year. So the government's on essentially the largest one-year adjustable rate mortgage in history. So if interest rates rise by 1 or 2 percentage points, it's going to be very expensive. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to your basic question, mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is definitely going up, unless something happens that we're not expecting. Mm-hmm. I'm not suggesting this, but let me just, as a hypothetical example, suppose there's a new AIDS-like disease that only hits people over 65 and wipes out half the population. All right, terrible situation, but it would completely change the projections for Social Security and Medicare. Assuming something that crisis-laden doesn't happen, then we've made the commitment. We've known that Social Security and Medicare was going up pretty substantially, as Medicaid has. We've always known it. So the question we're facing in the United States, simply as far as the biggest budget question is, are we going to tax more or are we going to stop doing something? Now, I don't mean, this is not a question of waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, there isn't $500 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse in the budget unless you decide that something like the Department of Agriculture is now waste, fraud, and abuse. That is, we no longer need a Department of Agriculture to deal with a sector of the economy that's a fraction of what it was when the department was created. Mm-hmm. Right? So those are the big questions that are coming. It's not the kind of question we typically deal with until there's a crisis situation.